You are welcome back to Tuntum Network, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cyrus. I'm happy to have you here again. Today's episode is on the continent Africa. I want us to look at in a scenario where Africa was one country or we had a unitary government, which places would be most suitable as the capital cities or the capital states of the continent. This is a vision that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, may his soul rest in peace, he wished for. He worked so hard to make this a reality when he led Ghana to independence in 1957.
There is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
And I'm sure on the day this becomes reality, he will smile in his grave. However, the Africa that we have today is totally different from the Africa that had independence back then. A lot of things have changed. So today, if you are looking at countries or cities to consider as the capital of Africa, you have to look at the current situations of those countries. But before we even get there, there are certain challenges that we'll have to overcome. For instance, the challenge of language barrier. Today in Africa, we speak a lot of languages: Portuguese, English, French, Spanish, Arab, and the thousands of local languages that we also speak. And there is this other challenge, which is how are we going to do it? Are we going to set up Africa as in the case of how the United States of America is set up, where states are governed by governors? Or are we going to set it up like in the case of China, where they have a unitary government, but they have leaders of different states? All these questions we'll have to ask. But in the event either of these two is accepted, we could also be looking at an Africa having all sovereign countries, just as we are today, but we get one educational curriculum, one military, we have one currency, we get one language, and we open all the borders. This could be a very practical thing in my estimation. That could become the scenario when the time comes for Africa to be united. I don't know how you feel about this, but out of these three things, I feel this is more possible. You may put it in the comment section what you think about this. Now, in my mind, there cannot be one capital city in Africa. Certainly, we have to have more than one. And so what I'm thinking is we may have at least two. We'll have the administrative capital, where the president, the ministers, or the judiciary, the legislature will be seated. And then we have the financial capital. In the case of, say, if you look at China, China's capital is Beijing, but their financial capital is Shanghai. All right. Canada's capital is Ottawa, but their financial capital is Toronto. And it's the same thing for many other countries. So we may have one or more capital cities for the continent. But a few countries come to mind when you are thinking about which African country stands out or will become the capital city of the great continent. But in looking at all these three countries, I came up with a criteria. Three main criteria all these countries will have to successfully pass in order to be considered as the capital cities of Africa. The first one will have to be the economic situation of that country or of that city, and then the geographical position of that country or of that city, and the third thing will be the security condition of that country or of that city. Now, if you look at just the surface, Nigeria will top as the biggest economy in Africa, followed by Egypt and South Africa. But that in itself wouldn't be enough to be considered as the capital or the financial capital of Africa. You need more than that. So I had to also consider the standard of living among these countries. Which country in Africa relatively have a better standard of living compared to the population that they have? And in trying to narrow this contest down, I came up with two main countries, which is South Africa and in Egypt. Unfortunately, Nigeria is outside of the top 5 looking in. But again, that in itself will not be conclusive of becoming the financial capital of Africa. So I had to also look at the most developed or most beautiful cities in Africa. And this is the list. It starts off with Cape Town in South Africa, Abidjan in Ivory Coast, Cairo in Egypt, Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, Johannesburg in South Africa. There are other websites where other cities are also listed, but in overall, most of these websites, out of the 12 websites that I was able to sample, gave me names that I've been able to deduce my top 5 most beautiful, most well-planned cities in Africa. And that makes the assessment even more difficult. So I had to again ask myself another question. Which one country in Africa is the most visited? And on the internet, you'll find Cairo, you'll find Morocco. But there are 2 things that you have to keep in focus. And that is the most visited as in countries outside of Africa visiting, and the most visited as in countries within Africa visiting. All right. But if you look at countries in Africa that other African nationals visit the most, then you have countries like South Africa, you have Kenya, and so forth. So all these things have to be considered. But again, you are looking for 2 different types of capitals: administrative capital and the financial capital. Now, I had to look at the financial states of most of these cities that we have in Africa. On the internet, this is the list of the biggest stock markets in Africa. It starts off with Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which is JSE. It is worth $1.36 trillion. Nigeria comes in second place, which is NGX, with $66.7 billion. Now, if you look at the gap between Nigerian stock market and Johannesburg stock market, it is so gargantuan that you cannot even fathom. That is $1.36 trillion compared to $66.7 billion. That's a lot of difference. That's a huge gap right there. The third place is Casablanca Stock Exchange, which is worth $65.3 billion. Egypt Stock Exchange comes in fourth, which is EGX, $35.72 billion. Nairobi Stock Exchange comes in at fifth, NSE, which is $17.19 billion. But will that alone in itself be conclusive of picking a capital as a financial hub of Africa? I think there is more to it than that. Let's take a look at these other things. If you Google right now, the financial hub of Africa, you'll find one name, and that is Casablanca. So I tried to look for reasons why Casablanca is ahead of the pack, even though it hasn't got the biggest stock exchange market in Africa. And the reason was simple, that is the one destination that most stock exchange brokers or most investors would like to travel to for so many reasons. But at the same time, if you do a research on the most racist countries in Africa, Morocco is number 1, followed by Egypt and then Lebanon, the same Morocco. So my question will be, would black Africans be willing to live and work in a country, alleged to be the most racist country in Africa? That is a question all of us will have to answer. And I'll give my verdict at the end of this episode, so please stay with me. So we move on to the second item on the list, which is the geographical location of that country or that city. Now, in considering this, you have to also look at the seaports that that country or city has, and then the multiple airports in terms of local and international airports they have, and how close they are to the rest of Africa. You'll find names like DRC, Chad, and Nigeria. These countries sort of are somewhere in the middle of Africa, including Cameroon. But is that in itself enough to qualify them? Certainly not. So I did a quick look at the countries with the most airports in Africa, and this is the list I found. Take a look at this. In summary, Nigeria has 6 international airports. South Africa has 22 international airports. Kenya has 6. Tanzania has 3. Ivory Coast has 3. Tunisia has 7. Morocco has 5. Egypt has 13. And my country, Ghana, has 2. Okay, so that is also another point of reflection for my own country. Then the third and one of the most important criteria that you really have to keep an eye on is security condition. If you Google right now, the most safest countries in Africa, 2023, this is the list you find. Mauritius, Ghana, the Gambia, Botswana, and Sierra Leone. Okay, now, when I look at all these 5 countries, one thing is clear. All the other 4 countries outside of Ghana have very small population. In fact, Ghana is bigger than all these 4 countries in population combined. What does that mean? It means I can make an argument for my country, Ghana. Ghana is literally the center of the world in terms of where the longitude 0 and the latitude 0 meet right here in Tema, in Greater Accra region. So we have a peaceful country, we have a peaceful city, and we have 2 international airports, with one being in Accra. And we have one of the most beautiful airports in Ghana. Does that alone in itself give us an upper hand? Maybe yes, maybe not. We'll take a look at that at the end of this podcast. But the strangest thing in all these criteria is that out of all these mighty cities that I've mentioned in Africa, none of them is represented on the top 5 safest places to be. None of these. Not Johannesburg, not Cape Town, not any city in Nigeria, not any city in Egypt or Morocco. None of that. So that is a point you have to actually pause and reflect on. They have so many good things going for them, but at the same time, they wouldn't be the safest place for you to travel to or do business in. What does that mean to you? I wish I would have added population size in the criteria. But thinking about it, that wouldn't necessarily mean much. So long as a place has a certain amount of people and some level of safety, and financially they are in good position, and geographically they are located in the right place with all the social amenities that are necessary in these places, population wouldn't be that of a big deal. So I had to waive it off the criteria. But in looking at all these things that I've mentioned, I have to come to a verdict. If Africa was united today and we have to pick 2 places as our capital, looking at administrative capital and financial capital, this is my verdict. There are 3 names that comes to my mind. And outside of these 3 names, you may write in the comment section whatever name you have in mind and give reasons. Please, if you are going to leave a comment in the comment section below, don't just list a name because that is where you live, but list a name and at least give me one reason why that city or that country would qualify as the capital of Africa. Now, these are the 3 names that I had. Number 1, Dar es Salaam of Tanzania. It is on the top 5 list of the most developed cities in Africa. So certainly they qualify. And relatively, they are safer than most of these cities that I mentioned. And on top of that, it is a city where it sort of has a lot of businesses from around the world already. And for that reason, I'll consider them as being the administrative capital of Africa. Second on my list will be Nairobi in Kenya. I would consider Nairobi, Kenya as being the financial capital of Africa, and this is my reason. A lot of startup businesses, a lot of incubation companies are situated in Kenya. A lot of tech companies are also situated in Nairobi, Kenya. There are a lot of good things that are happening there. They are relatively also less dangerous compared to some of these other cities. And it's a very developed city. So on these facts alone, I would consider Nairobi, Kenya as the financial capital of Africa. The third country I would consider as the financial capital of Africa would be Johannesburg. And the reason is simple, because they have the biggest stock exchange market in that city. It's a very developed city. Even though it's not as safe as some of these cities that I've mentioned, it is already home to a lot of multinational companies' headquarters. Take it or leave it, that is where they are. They are home to a lot of top 100 companies in Africa. So certainly some companies see the merit in being in Johannesburg. They have multiplicity of ethnic groups. Okay, the weather is very good also there. And it's a developed city. So a few things are also going very well for them. So I'll consider Johannesburg for the financial capital of Africa. I'll also consider Nairobi as the financial hub of Africa. And I'll also consider Dar es Salaam as the administrative capital of Africa. Whatever you have in mind, please make sure you put it in the comment section below. My country, Ghana and Greater Accra, I feel we have an advantage in security, but there are certain key factors which are equally most important that we do not have. But you can also make an argument for Abidjan in Ivory Coast. They speak French. The city is very developed, except for the political instability that they have there recently. Apart from that, they would have been an excellent place to have it. The reason I've always wanted to do this particular topic in an episode is because I've almost met somebody from every African country, except for a few islands. That gives me a certain perspective of what other people from different countries normally think when the topic of African unity comes to mind. But as to whether this will become a reality in our lifetime or after we are dead and gone, that is still unknown. And that is what we hope for. And thank you so much for those who have subscribed to this channel. I really appreciate your comments and helping me share to other people. Thank you so much. Please remember to leave a comment if you have to. God bless you. Until I come your way again, it's bye-bye for now.